Hello, and welcome to this channel, Highly Sensitive Wisdom. My name is Susanna, and today's topic is the power of spiritual fasting. So right now I am recording a series of videos based on biblical wisdom and biblical spirituality, and also sharing some of the experiences that I am having since I got baptized last year to officially become a follower of Jesus Christ. And I have also been studying the Bible seriously and committedly for a bit over a year, and also implementing things that I am learning so that it doesn't just stay up here, some interesting intellectual, good to have knowledge or good to have information, so many things we learn, we don't implement them right away, and then we end up, forgetting all about it, or like it's not gonna produce any kind of transformation or any tangible results for us if you don't actually implement it. And that's also why I'm recording today's video to give uh, to frame, spiritual fasting. We will be looking at differences between other kinds of fasting and spiritual fasting. They are very different, even though the main activity, like abstaining from eating, seems to be the same, right? But the outcome will be very different. And also some of the things that I have been doing for a bit over a year in my own, routines of spiritual fasting, and some other results that I have been achieving with that. And yeah, some tips, that you could implement in your life if you want to. So I recorded previous videos in this series about biblical spirituality and wisdom. If you want to watch those also, why we need to study the Bible. I was wrong about Jesus, and also about who is Satan and why should you care. I will drop those links in the description below if you want to watch those to get a richer and fuller picture and, understanding of what we are doing here. So if you like this content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and also share your aha moments and key takeaways in the comment section below. And also share your own experiences that you have had with spiritual fasting, so that we can inspire each other, uplift each other, and share knowledge and, experiences and wisdom. I want this channel, Highly Sensitive Wisdom, to be a living community. And I really love it and enjoy it when you share also what you are learning and what you have been implementing in your life, in your spiritual routines. So thank you in advance for your participation. All right, so first thing I said we were going to look at why spiritual fasting is different from other kinds of fasting. Yeah, so many people use fasting or intermittent fasting and so forth because they want to lose weight, or they want to detoxify themselves, physically, or they want to look better aesthetically, or they have some kind of either aesthetic concern, they want to improve their physical, looks of their body, or some kind of health issues or health concerns. Because yeah, it's also a fact that our digestive organs, they work a lot on digesting our food, our physical food. So maybe we don't think of it because we get hungry maybe every 3 or 4 hours, but the digestion process is not finished in 3 or 4 hours. So while we are, eating more food, our digestive system and digestive organs, they are still working on your last meal. And, the process of digesting your food and assimilating the nutrients and, producing waste also to eliminate what is not needed in your body, that process takes many, many hours. So when you eat more food, you're adding more workload on your already working digestive system, which is also why fasting could be a good way to, give your digestive organs rest and recovery so they can recover from their workload. But that is not spiritual fasting. I just mentioned that because, yeah, fasting in general is usually a good thing to implement regularly. Even if you don't do it with a spiritual purpose. But yeah, the purpose of today's video is the power of spiritual fasting. So yeah, we'll be speaking more about the spiritual aspects, right? So the first thing you need to know is that you have to do it progressively. You cannot start, if you are new to spiritual fasting, just because you are very enthusiastic about your spiritual path, and maybe you have had some breakthroughs or revelations from God, or you have grown a lot spiritually, and now you think like, yeah, I can do, I can do this, I can do, yeah, just remember that there is also a physical aspect to it. So even if you are super enthusiastic and you know what you need to do, you know that the benefits are, there are great benefits for you from implementing this spiritual practice, you still cannot go, progress too fast, because your physical body perceives any change as a stressor. So even if, the purpose is spiritual, but your physical body will still be on board on that journey, which means that you still have to respect the physicality of your body in the process of implementing new spiritual routines and habits such as spiritual fasting. So don't go too fast. Or maybe you watched videos on YouTube of, from people who have been fasting for many years, and they speak about 3-day fasting, 7-day fasting, or even 21-day fasting. And you're like, wow, I want to do that because the benefits they are reporting are so great. I want those benefits. Yeah, but if you're just starting out, you cannot start with 3-day fast or 7-day fast. That would be a disaster for your physical body. You would cause so much stress unnecessarily. So what you need to do is, add more progressively. So like I started with 3 hours, just skipping a meal. That was a good start, and then I raised the bar a little bit to like 6 or 7 hours of fasting. And then from there, I went to have a full day fasting. And when I say a full day fasting, I mean 24 hours or even more, because yeah, let's say I will fast on a Saturday. Then the last meal will be dinner Friday night, and the next meal will be breakfast Sunday morning. So yeah, in reality, it will be more than 24 hours because yeah, we sleep and such. We don't eat usually when we sleep. But yeah, awakened hours, those will be, the time of that entire day that you will be awake, and that you will be aware of fasting, and that you will do other things with your focus and your time that will not be invested in food and eating and preparing food. So don't go too fast. So as I said, I have been implementing this spiritual fasting now for a bit over a year. So I went from 3 hours first skipping one meal to 6 or 7 hours skipping two meals, and from there full day fast. And that's where I'm at the moment. God is giving me instructions to have 2 days of full day fast, but not together. So and that's where I am at right now, starting to implement 2 full day fasts per week. And God is telling me, yeah, you have to have 2 full days in between to eat and recover, all the nutrients that you need. So don't have the 2 days together, So that would mean if I fast on a Saturday, then the next day, that I could fast would be on Tuesday, right? So yeah, so those are the instructions that I am receiving, and that you could implement also in your own life, dear watcher. Obviously, if God is telling you something else, follow what God is saying, not what I am saying, because the instructions we could receive or that we are receiving could differ, because your circumstances or your body, there are individual differences also. So there's no one formula that applies to everyone. And that's also why you need to follow your own intuition. You need to know your own body really well, and you need to develop your own relationship with God to receive that kind of instructions that I am receiving, and not just blindly follow what someone else is doing or saying to you, right? But yeah, that is common sense. But so many just listen to what others say and don't, adjust the advice on their own situation. So yeah, I still want to mention that you could do this, you could do that, but don't follow it blindly, right? um, so yeah, I will continue raising the bar and doing more spiritual fasting progressively as I receive more guidance and more instructions from God. Like, now is the time to move on to the next level, right? So what you need to know also, dear watcher, is that when you are fasting, you're not just taking something away, which is food, physical food, you're also adding something else. And it's not only food. When we think we're going to do a fast, in whatever shape or form, we just usually think, okay, I will not be eating for a number of hours or a number of days. And then what? So it's not only food that you will abstain from when you do a spiritual fasting. You will also abstain from all kinds of stimulation, all kinds of inputs to your system, not only physical food, but all kinds of stimulation or inputs from the external world that could be hindering you or putting obstacles in your relationship with God and your communication with God. So you can think of it like your energy system and your physical body, like that's a channel, right? So when you're communicating with God, if there is a lot of things, obstacles in that channel, either you will not have a clear communication with God, or you will not be able to receive it, or there are things in you that could distort, the communication, which could also make you doubt what you receive, or doubt your intuition, or second guess, like, is it really correct? Because maybe in your current circumstances, it's like, this just doesn't make sense. Why would God be telling me these things? And maybe you're doubting or second guessing the information that you receive. So a spiritual fasting could be a good way of clearing some of the obstacles in your channel, your energy system, and also your physical body, right? Which is the temple of your soul, and also the vessel, for the Holy Spirit of God. The Holy Spirit of God resides within you, also in your physical body. So that is also, strengthening that connection, strengthening the spirit that is inside you, by not falling into all of these temptations and all of these habits that we have of following our own will, but instead following the will of God. So it's not only abstaining from physical food, even though that is the immediate thing we think about when we're talking about fasting, right? We are also going to abstain from other kinds of stimulation that would interfere or hinder or put obstacles in our communication with God. So that could be, for instance, don't just abstain from food and then you indulge in scrolling on social media. That is not spiritual fasting. Or you abstain from eating food, but then you are, spend time with people who maybe are not that spiritual or not that serious about their spiritual path, and maybe they are sharing negativity with you, gossiping about other people, or complaining, or dumping their negativity on you. Then also that is not really spiritual fasting, because you're taking in stimulation or inputs that will not allow this, spiritual cleansing to occur. Or maybe you are alone at home and you watch a movie, I don't know, something, a suspense movie or a drama movie with a lot of intrigues and stuff. Yeah, that is also not spiritual fasting, because you're distracting yourself from the hunger, or you're distracting yourself from focusing inwards and focusing on your spiritual, rituals, or your spiritual, habits. And instead you're focusing on something external, in this case, distraction or entertainment from a movie. That is not really spiritual fasting either, because you're abstaining from eating physical food, but you're still eating, so to speak, sensorial stimulation from the outside world that has nothing to do with your relationship with God, So don't do that. Instead, what you do, so you abstain from all of the kinds of inputs from the external world into your temple, into your body temple, and not only physical food. And instead, you focus on, cultivating your relationship with God. I also recorded another video about that, called Deepen Your Relationship with God and Receive Your Blessings. I'll drop the link to that video in the description below. Yeah, but I don't think I spoke about fasting in that video. Yeah, I wasn't really firm with this habit and this spiritual tool yet. So I didn't mention that in the video, but other things that are useful and helpful to improve your relationship with God. So you will use the time that you would have invested into preparing food, eating food, digesting food, thinking about food, or falling into temptations or cravings. It doesn't have to be just solid food, but so many other things that we fall for as temptations, or we indulge into consuming things that we don't even need. So instead of focusing on that, which for many of us, food is a very important part of our everyday life, right? Most people eat 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe snack in between. So for most people, it's an important part to be eating or preparing food or digesting food. So it's not only that you will have abstain from during the duration of your spiritual fasting. You will instead use that time, that focus, that attention, that life force or your energy to actively looking for God. So that could be, for instance, reading the Bible, studying the Bible. As I mentioned in the previous video, why we need to study the Bible. It could be singing worship songs to God. It could be meditating a lot. Could be praying more than you usually do. It could be spending quality time in nature, walking in nature, which is also a temple of God, nature. So there are so many things you could do that have spiritual charge to it, right? So that we don't only take something away, which is the food and the sensorial stimulation from the outside world, but we also replace it with something else. So that we use this time wisely, because we are not supposed to just sit through our hours. Like if we decide to do an entire day fasting, that should by no means be like a day wasted, or something you just do because you think you have to do it. That will not give you the results that you are looking for. You really need to be committed and devoted to God those hours of that day. Obviously, there are things maybe we have to do in our everyday life that cannot wait. So maybe there are duties we have to take care of that cannot wait to the next day. So I'm not saying you should do only that for the entire day and don't do anything else other than God for an entire day. Maybe that is not realistic for you. But yeah, a few hours of that day you could, focus in a way of being, focused and committed and devoted to your relationship with God, and that is really where the transformation will be at its strongest. Uh, and what I wanted to mention also is that, yeah, we are so used to separating things in categories in this world, in this society, in the Western contemporary societies, which is completely artificial, which is completely a very limited, reduction of what reality is. So many people think of, okay, this is spiritual, this is physical, this is mental, this is emotional, this is professional, this is something else. And we put them into boxes or into categories, but we rarely reunite the different pieces of the puzzle. So when you're doing a spiritual fasting, yes, we will feel the effects in our physical body and we will abstain from doing something physical, which is eating physical food. But there are also things happening both inside your physical body and in your, subtle bodies. Um, So, for instance, something that I have observed is since I started to implement full day fasting, it doesn't always occur, but sometimes by the end of the day, I start vomiting. And that is something physical. And you would think, oh, I haven't eaten anything. Why would my body react like that? Throwing up something physical, if the only thing I have been doing is, drinking water the entire day. But yeah, that is also something spiritual because yeah, many people have an aversion towards vomiting because yeah, the experience of throwing up is quite unpleasant, especially if it's very, visceral, and you feel like this violent impulse, and like you lose all control and you just feel miserable. Yeah, that is not a nice experience. But think of it this way: it is a very important part of the cleansing, spiritual cleansing. If you do it throughout by the end of the day of a full day fasting, spiritual fasting, that means that your spiritual fasting has been very effective. Because it's better that you get rid of those toxins and those, that spiritual debris, that spiritual, waste that is somewhere in your system that maybe you're not aware of on a daily basis. But that is preferable to having it still inside you. Because let me remind you that by the law of attraction, which is a universal law, you attract with what you are. So you attract with your energies. So you don't attract just what you want to attract or what you desire or what you say you want. You attract with what you actually are, energetically speaking. So it doesn't matter how hard you work with your conscious mind, which is only 1% of your global mental capacity. If you have things stuck still in your energy system and in your physical body from previous experiences, including previous relationships with people who maybe were not good for you, It's much better to do a spiritual cleansing and get rid of those, spiritual fasting, get rid of those through vomiting, than having that still in your system and keep attracting challenges or difficulties, struggles, hardships, suffering in all shapes and forms, just because someone in your past, had very detrimental influences over you, right? So it's better to get rid of it once and for all. So when I have almost finished my full day fasting and start vomiting, I'm like, yes, yes, this has been effective. Good, And I celebrate that. As strange as it may sound, I celebrate that, and I'm like, yes, today has been a good day. So that is also something you may consider. Like, yeah, you can accelerate your process or your healing journey, your cleansing, whatever cleansing you're doing, whatever detox you're doing, you can accelerate that, but by implementing spiritual fasting. And I also want to mention something that you can do to further, enhance the effects of your spiritual cleansing in the physical. Hey, spiritual fasting, not only abstaining from food and other sensorial inputs from the outside world and focusing that on your relationship with God instead. But there are also things you can implement, such as certain essential oils. So we'll be mentioning one in particular. I have a difference. Encens oliban in English is called frankincense. I'm really passionate about essential oils. I'm not an aromatherapist, professionally, but I'm very passionate about things. So when I, focus on something, I learn everything I possibly can about that before moving on to something else. So I started using essential oils back in 2018 when I was living in France. That's where I learned about essential oils. And yeah, by now I have private collection in my home of over 60, and that's 60, different essential oils in my home and many books that I've read on the topic. So yeah, I do have some experience to speak about essential oils, and also how I have been able to perceive in my own experience what kind of benefits that can add to your spiritual practices that you are already doing. So frankincense is super powerful as an essential oil, especially when it comes to spiritual things such as meditation or spiritual fasting. And you can diffuse it in an aroma diffuser, in the air while you are meditating or while you are praying or while you are doing your spiritual fast. And yeah, I will read also from a book about essential oils and about healing, vibrational healing, because then again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're so used to cutting information or parts of reality into slices, and we forget to reconnect the pieces. So in many books I've read about aromatherapy, there's a quite chemical approach. So in some cases, they kind of imitate the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, and instead of taking, some pharmaceutical pill, oh, you take these essential oils with these, chemical characteristics, and you will have a good result. And yeah, that's part of the charm and the efficiency of essential oils, but they are so much more than just chemical, molecules and stuff. And that's also why I always advocate for a holistic understanding. So if we are going to use essential oils for spiritual purposes or for healing or for, whatever you use essential oils for, if you use them, that is optional. Yeah, don't just focus on the chemicals and the chemotypes and the molecules and the like more or less pharmaceutical applications of essential oils, but you have to also think about where did the plant grow, in what conditions did the plant grow, that has also shaped the character of the holistic effect that essential oils will have over you and your energy system. So I will be reading a short passage from a very good book called Vibrational Healing. There's a subtitle, Revealing the Essence of Nature Through Aromatherapy's Use of Essential Oils by Deborah Eidson. So this book came out the year 2000. least not that new, but yeah, I have found it very worthwhile reading and applying, things that I have learned from this book. So the author, Deborah Eidson, she is a healer. She has, a lot of experience with different kinds of healing modalities. And what I really enjoy about her approach is that she has a very holistic thinking. So she doesn't stay just with essential oils, that chemotypes and chemical components, and we will invent combinations to blend them together like a recipe. Instead of going to the pharmacy, you will buy these essential oils and you will create this recipe, and then you will take that like an aroma cocktail. Now, she doesn't have that kind of approach like many others do. And that's why I enjoy this book very much. And that's why I will use this and not another book as a reference when it comes to using frankincense essential oil for spiritual purposes. So there's a list of many different essential oils in alphabetic order. So this one about frankincense is part of, the individual breakdown of each essential oil in that list, right? So I'll be reading a few lines here from this book, Vibrational Healing. So, let's see. I quote, "Meditation with frankincense oil awakens spiritual purpose in a person. Frankincense's energy in religious ceremonies through the ages has helped people feel closer to God's mercy. It was widely believed that burning frankincense erased prayers to heaven. Using the oil guides and reconnects person into their God essence, known as the I Am presence. Energetically, frankincense helps a person develop the integrity to take responsibility for the consequences of their actions. Not learning the lesson of an experience hinders spiritual growth and may cause a painful, frustrating repetition of events. The Magi gave the gift of frankincense to the baby Jesus." And then I will skip a few lines because that is not relevant to today's topic in this video, but relevant for other areas of knowledge, of course. And then I keep quoting, "The frankincense tree grows in the desert. The starkness of the desert landscape helps people to feel the serenity of their soul." End of quote. So as I said, this is from the book Vibrational Healing by Deborah Eidson. So if you are into essential oils, read this book and implement what you learn in it. That would be one of my recommendations from today's video. All right. So that is something you can do also to enhance your experiences of your spiritual fasting. And then there is the topic like, should we abstain from everything so we don't eat food, nor do we drink water, nothing, just we live on the spiritual side of things. I cannot give you any advice on that, dear watcher. You have to feel what is right for you. I've tried once to fast without water, without anything, and doesn't work for me. I really need water, and because I also have this energetic perspective as a certified energy worker, and I have many years now experience of doing energy work, I know that I need the water to cleanse out the energies, the surface. So for me, from my perspective at least, abstaining from food and water just because you're doing a fasting, that to me is counterintuitive and counterproductive. So I do drink water. I do take electrolyte powder, that I mix in water to make sure that my body stays hydrated throughout the duration of the fasting. And for me, that has worked really, really well. But as I said, you do what you feel is good for you, dear watcher. And please inform yourself from different sources of information. Don't rely just on one source and say, this is the truth, let's do this. Now inform yourself and apply your critical thinking and your common sense before you implement it in your own life, right? So let's move on to the next point, which is some of the benefits of implementing this spiritual fasting as a practice in your spiritual path, your spiritual journey, and doing so regularly. So I fast every single week now. At least one day, full day fasting, and then sometimes a few hours here and there fasting. But at least one full day fasting I do per week now. And what I have discovered, in addition to feeling God's presence more clearly inside me and having a clearer communication with God, and not only rely on the Bible or on what pastors say through their experience and their wide knowledge, but also receiving direct communication from God. Actually, that started having that kind of direct communication with God. That started only after I started implementing spiritual fasting as a spiritual tool and doing so regularly. So I mean every week. So last year when I started with spiritual fasting, I was really surprised to discover that what seemed to be out of the blue, because it arrived quite suddenly, is that God opened up a channel of communication with me, individually, that I had never experienced before. And to me, I thought I have a good intuition. I have a well-developed intuition I've had since I was a teenager. I have been relying on this communication from my intuition. So I always knew there was something more to the world and to the reality than this physical material world that we habitually call the world. But this was just a whole new dimension, because then I can just take pen and paper and start writing down specific instructions that God is giving me through this channel. And there have also been occasions when I didn't do my spiritual fasting exactly every week, and then that came up in our daily communication between God and me, like, oh, you're distancing yourself from this habit, you have to fast at least once or twice a week, or our communication channel will have obstacles. It will be more difficult for you to receive what I want to give you. So you need to keep up with this practice of spiritual fasting. You need to do it at least once or twice a week for us to maintain open this channel of direct communication. That's that's the level of specificity that I am receiving, and I can truly say from personal experience that yeah, it is true. When I do, if there is one week that I don't do spiritual fasting, it will be more difficult for me to receive, these, downloads or whatever you want to call them, from higher realms of reality. And then it doesn't matter how many hours I spend singing worship songs. It doesn't matter how many hours I spend reading the Bible. It doesn't matter how well intentioned my heart is. If I don't do this practice every single week of spiritual fasting, it will be more difficult for me to receive the information that God wants to give me, because my channel, there will be blockages in my channel. If you think of your body and your energy system like a channel, in this case, channel of communication, right? So we need to, do what we can to stay, pure, and cleanse ourselves spiritually as well as physically, cleansing ourselves from toxins and so forth. And just because I say this is spiritual, fasting, doesn't mean that your body will separate and only do spiritual cleansing and spiritual fasting. No, your body will obviously also seize the occasion to, oh, great, we are resting our digestive system. Now let's rest and recover and release, waste products and toxins that we have been waiting, that has been lined up in queue, that we that we needed to get rid of anyway. Let's seize the occasion now and let's flush that out. So just because it's a spiritual cleansing, spiritual fasting, doesn't mean that no physical cleansing could occur also. Those go together, physical body and spiritual fasting, and those go together. So we have to stop thinking of, oh, this is physical, this is spiritual, this is emotional, this is mental, this is professional, this is something else. And we have to stop that thinking, because we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not connecting the dots, by not putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Because we, as a being, we are one. We are one being with multiple facets and multiple aspects and multiple, there are different, there are various, bodies, subtle bodies, but we're still one being, and we have to connect the dots to align with our soul mission, our soul purpose, and the purpose that God had when creating us as humans. The purpose God had before we incarnated physically on this physical plane, which is called the earth. So you truly have to connect the dots and, make that effort. And yeah, I do believe if you implement spiritual fasting weekly, and you do it seriously, and you use that time wisely also to cultivate your relationship with God, I believe that you too can have breakthroughs like the one I had. and that I keep having, because my communication with God is increasingly clear, increasingly specific, and it becomes increasingly easier and easier for me also to see where it is going. So it doesn't have to be only blind obedience, but I can also see, further down the road where we are heading with this, because, clearing away obstacles from my own system. So that is also why it's so important to always treat our physical body with love, respect, reverence. I would even go so far as to say we have to treat our physical body with reverence, because it is a temple, truly. I also recorded a video on that earlier on this channel. It's called "Your Body is a Living Lie Detector. Honor Your Body." I'll drop the link to that video in the description below. So yes, when you do spiritual fasting also regularly, that can also help your physical body to become more accurate in his or her lie detector abilities, lie detector, qualities that are innate to the human body. And one more thing that I want to mention before we start wrapping up this video is that sometimes there can be misunderstandings about, the purpose of a fast, whether spiritual or other kinds of fasting. Like, oh, we have to be like we have to make things hard for ourselves and difficult for ourselves, like we're indulging in self-abuse, or we have to, you know, um, torture ourselves maybe, but we have to it has to be difficult, otherwise it will not work, or we have to punish ourselves because we have been bad, or we have done bad things in whatever capacity, and now we have to punish ourselves by starving. That is not at all the purpose. We're not trying to punish ourselves by starving and like, oh, I have to suffer, it has to be difficult, it has to be hard. And if it wasn't hard and difficult and I suffered and I felt the hunger screaming at me like a black hole open inside me, then the fasting wasn't effective. No, that is bullshit. We can have spiritual fasting without suffering, without like feeling like we are going through some kind of punishment, or that, oh, I have to do this because I haven't behaved as God expects me to behave. No, it has nothing to do with that. So I will share one more tip before we wrap up today's video: how I prepare my physical body for a full day fast. So let's take the example again. I will do a full day fast on a Saturday. So on Friday evening, I'm eating the last meal before the fast. Then I start speaking with my body to prepare her what is coming. So I put up very clear time frames how long the fast will last, so that she doesn't have to get worried. Because if we don't prepare ourselves mentally and speak with our physical body what's going to happen, then what is likely to happen is that your survival instinct will kick in while you are doing the fasting. So that maybe you're feeling much more hunger, which is not proportional to the amount of time without food, because your physical body could misinterpret the fasting and say like, "Ooh, I will not receive food, never again. We will starve to death." Now we have to put on all of the alarm bells, like food, 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 because your body thinks that you're going to starve your body to death. That's a survival instinct. So in order to not suffer unnecessarily while doing your spiritual fasting, because your body thinks that this will last forever and that you'll starve her or him to death, and that she or he has to, activate all of the survival mechanisms to make sure you give them food. In order to, prevent that kind of experience, which would make spiritual fasting more difficult than it has to be, because you would be distracted away from reading the Bible, or away from your worship music, or away from your prayers, because you will be focusing on, oh, I'm so hungry, this is so difficult to be doing this spiritual fasting, I'm too hungry, I will not be able to make it through. You'll be distracted with hunger. So in order to prevent that, prepare your body in advance by explaining what will happen, give clear time frames, and explain. For instance, my communication with my body goes something like that, like something like this: to prepare her for full day fasting. So let's say the full day fasting is on a Saturday, and on Friday evening, while I'm having dinner, I'm telling my body, "Dear body, just so you know, tomorrow we are fasting the entire day. So you will not receive any food tomorrow. You will receive food again on Sunday, because this is a one-day fasting, and I promise you I will not starve you to death, and I will not keep you away from food forever. So you do not have to worry about anything. You do not have to get anxious about anything, because I'm, managing this, and I'm counting on your support, and we are in this together. So it's one day without food. On Sunday, you will receive food as usual. And so tomorrow we will be doing spiritual fasting. We will not be eating, but you will receive the water. You will spend time in nature, which I know you really love, dear body. We will be praying. We will be singing worship songs. We will be studying the Bible. We will be doing all of these different things. And yeah, there will be some, chores to make, take care of, in the home, or, practical stuff from the everyday life. I will be doing those too. And yeah, so Sunday, back to normal. You will receive food as always. And yeah, we're in this together. We're a team. And thank you for being with me through the fasting tomorrow. Something like that. Doesn't have to be anything complicated, but guess what happens? I can spend an entire day without eating any physical food, and I hardly feel any hunger at all. My body doesn't need to send me those kind of hunger signals, or those kind of survival instincts signals, because she already knows, okay, today is fasting, tomorrow we eat as usual, let's focus on something else. So my body doesn't have to get worried and scream at me like, give me food, give me food, give me food, by creating very strong hunger signals, because she knows, yeah, tomorrow we're back to normal and we will be eating food. So there's nothing dramatic about abstaining from eating food an entire day. My body already knows what is going on and how long it will last. So no need to worry. Because also our body is constantly communicating with us. On a conscious mind level, and we are indoctrinated and taught to, silence our body, to not, to dismiss our body as something important at all, and to we make it something either not important, or like many people take just some pharmaceutical to silence symptoms, not realize that there could be much deeper root causes for those symptoms. And yeah, I did record another video on that called Your Physical Symptoms Could in Reality Be Spiritual Symptoms. I'll drop the link to that video also in the description below. And with this, dear watcher, I believe I have shared enough information, enough first-hand experiences, and also some giving some frames to this practice. And obviously, if you want biblical references, there are plenty of references in the Holy Bible speaking about fasting specifically. And so much wisdom in this book. I really can't recommend enough reading and studying the Holy Bible. I should have started 20 years ago. I regret not starting earlier, but yeah, better late than never, right? A lot of information also there if you need some more guidance and references. And yeah, you can also fast together with other people who are spiritually awakened, who also have a regular habit of doing spiritual fasting. And you can, support each other, share your experiences between each other, and, encourage each other also. That can also be a really nice, experience or activity in community. So even though maybe you feel alone during the fasting, you are not alone unless you choose to, right? So that is also something to be mindful of. And with this, dear watcher, I will indeed wrap up this video. I have more videos to record for you. So please let me know in the comment section what you learned from this video and what steps you are taking to implement spiritual fasting in your own life. And then come back a few weeks later and tell us all how it went. If you're new to spiritual fasting, I'm really excited to learn also how you are going through this experience, and what kind of breakthroughs you are having when you implement spiritual fasting in your own life. So take care. As always, take care, stay hydrated, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye for now.